Awesome. So Cam asked the first great question, what is 57 hours? Where does that come from? So quick intro, my name is Stephanie. I work for 57 hours. Maya is also on the line. She's giving me tech support and backup. You'll see her in the chat box. She's joining us from Zagreb, Croatia. 57 hours. We're an online platform that connects folks like you with certified and qualified guides like Albert, who is our guide here today. It's our dream to enable sustainable outdoor adventure for everyone. And so we do this twofold. We have our sustainability kind of program initiative. We're a member of 1% for the Planet. We give back to Access Fund and protect our winters. And we also give scholarships to our guides as they go out and get more education and become even more certified and qualified. So we have 8 guides we're supporting this year through our Guide Education Fund. But that number 57, that's the time from Friday at 3 p.m. till midnight on Sunday that many of us, not all of us, but many of us have off. So 57 hours is a nod to that time off and making the most of it and getting outside in sustainable ways that support our environment and support all of the wonderful people that are here. So that's our name. We're so happy we're here. We're here with all of you today. I just want to take a minute to thank Albert and Alan for joining us and Maya for the backup support. Albert is our guide from Amarok Adventures. Albert, you want to wave so they all know who you are?
Yeah.
You're going to say hi.
Everyone. Hi.
Yeah. And then Alan is one of his wonderful guests that joined him on the Annapurna Circuit. I don't know which year. Was it last year?
Last year, yeah.
Last year. And Alan is then joining Albert in Iceland this coming year on his hidden trail. So Albert's going to get a chance to talk about Amarok Adventures and all the trips they lead and introduce himself. But a quick thank you and hello and welcome to both Alan and Albert for being here with us today. So Albert, I'm going to pass this off to you to talk a little bit about yourself, Monica, your partner, and Amarok Adventures.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thank you, Stephanie. And thanks, Alan, also for being here and for agreeing to to connect for a little time with us, to a little talk with us. So my name is Albert. I'm broadcasting at this moment from Iceland. I have a small travel agency along with my partner, Monica. And we are basically focused on hiking and adventure trips to different places in the world. We normally do Iceland, the Faroe Islands, Greenland, and Nepal. What is kind of like interesting about our company is that even though we were based in Europe, even though we were based in Iceland, our company was born in Nepal. And it was born after doing a very nice Annapurna Circuit back in 2017. And after doing some extra adventures in Nepal. So we spent about a month there. We were already guides working for big companies. And we said, why not doing what we really like to do? Why not guiding the trips that we like to do? And we decided to start offering different kind of trips, that is the ones that we would do by ourselves. So going to places a bit more remote, to places a bit more challenging, instead of just sticking to the most common things that normally people do. And we have been doing this for the last years, even during COVID. It has been a fantastic adventure and it keeps going.
Yeah, that's wonderful. We so love having all of your trips hosted on the 57 hours on our site. So from like Iceland to Faroe Islands, you go so many different places. But I want to give a moment really quickly to talk to Alan and let Alan introduce himself. Alan, last year, like I said, you went to Annapurna, you trekked with them. So I'd love to know a little bit about who you are and why you chose Annapurna and maybe why you even chose Amarok as your guide outfitter.
So my name is Alan. I'm coming from Croatia. I'm 52. Last year, 51 when I did Annapurna. And Annapurna was my absolutely a priority on my bucket list. So 13 years ago, right now, I told to my wife Spomenka, look, I need to go to Annapurna. And then I waited for so long. Thank you for hosting this webinar from Kevin. Then I waited so long, and then actually I first hear from 57 about Annapurna, and met Albert and Monica in Nepal. and this was my dream true. And Annapurna happened after surgery on both of my knees, and after a year and a half after surgery on my spine. So it was for me like a big win, like a big new awareness about what my body can do. And with the help, and it's really important how Albert and Monica is guiding the Annapurna trek, I finally succeeded with all of these difficulties.
Yeah. Alan, we had heard little tidbits of that story. I think you had commented on one of our co-founders like Facebook posts. And so Maya had told me about that. And that's a really incredible story. And I know Albert and myself were so proud of you for going through that surgery and then coming out to do the Annapurna trek to kind of showcase all that you grew and improved. So folks, if you've had surgery out there, all of this is still in grasp, which is really cool. Albert, I didn't catch it earlier. Did you talk about the other trips that you offer at Amarok Adventures? There were some questions coming in. I didn't hear if you touched on that yet.
No. So
Yeah.
as I said before, we are based in Iceland. Through 57 hours, we offer 12 days backpacking tour. That is the one that Alan is going to join us this summer. It's basically a 12 days backpacking tour from hut to hut. So we sleep every single night in mountain huts, very remote mountain huts, and we end the trip doing the most beautiful stages of the famous Laugavegu Trail that it has been awarded by National Geographic as one of the most beautiful treks in the world. And then I'm leaving next week towards the Faroe Islands, that it's a small archipelago in between the UK and Iceland. And we are going to be doing our famous hiking and sailing trip there. That was last year featured on Lonely Planet as one of the best trips that you can take on this archipelago. And then in September, we are moving towards East Greenland for another hiking adventure there. And then when we come back, we will just go, we will have October for free for doing some day tours. We also run like small adventures for those who are coming to Iceland, traveling by themselves. And then we are just moving towards Nepal for both the Annapurna Circuit and the Manaslu Circuit.
Yeah. Albert, you and Monica are busy, to say the least, but you all travel to some incredible places. You take the most incredible photos and videos, and you just bring so much magic to what you do. It's really incredible. Alan, you look like you had something you thought of.
No, I just told to my daughter that I have a Zoom call.
Okay. Yeah, you were just reminding everyone you're live right now. Well, folks, let's jump into some of these questions. We're going to talk a little bit about logistics of like getting to Kathmandu, getting to the Annapurna trek. We're going to talk about the trail itself. So we'll answer questions about like elevation gain. We'll also think about training. I want to jump to that pretty quickly because I want Alan to be able to share a little bit about how he prepared, especially in light of his surgery. And then we'll talk about gear and packing. So we'll think about what Mark's question is, how much should your full pack weigh? We'll let Albert answer all of those questions. But I think I'd love to start with a little introduction to, I know you painted a beautiful picture of why you and Monica fell in love with Nepal and how it inspired Amarok Adventures. But in watching your last webinar you did with us, you said Nepal is so much more than just the mountains. You talked about the people, their smiles. I'm not going to say it all, but you painted such a beautiful picture, Albert, of what makes Nepal so special and even what makes really Annapurna come to life. I know you talked about it from the perspective of you and Monica, but let's talk about the people, the culture, food, things like that. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nepal has a completely different, what would be the word, culture than the one that we normally imagine coming from the US, from Canada or Europe. Normally, when you are just thinking about traveling to Nepal, you think about these people living in the mountains and running these small tea houses. There's way much more. So Nepal is pretty big, has a lot of ethnicities living on the country. Hundreds of different languages, all the religions coexisting all together, and they are just happy people. You are gonna never ever see discussion between two Nepalese on the street. It's quite rare. You are not ever gonna see people just I don't know, discussing from the cars like we normally are used to see in the big cities. Everything works in perfect harmony in Nepal. Everything is completely different, and they are just, as I said, happy. They are always with that constant smile on their faces. Of course, as I said, you have completely different ethnicities on the country. You have the southern part of Nepal is called the Terai region. That's a bit more humid. That's much more made by jungle. It's just on the border with India. So it's completely different to the border with Tibet or with the border with China that we have in the north. The cultures, of course, are completely different. And then you have absolutely different gastronomy depending on where you are traveling to. Like people in the south, they tend to cook a completely different meals than the people living up in the north. But everything is homemade. Everything comes from the back of their gardens. They just grow whatever they want on whatever they can, and they can cook amazing courses just with a few items on their kitchen.
Yeah. I'm going to interject with one question from Kevin real quick, because I know he's signing off. And correct me if I'm wrong, though, it is really easy to be a vegetarian during these treks and in Nepal in general. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think this would be a question for Alan, because if I'm not mistaken, you are vegetarian.
Perfect.
So I don't know, how did you feel it, but did you feel it easy for a vegetarian to travel to Nepal?
Absolutely. I mean, they don't have a lot of meat generally. They eat mostly vegetables, and they are preparing it in a most beautiful way, because this is the basics of their food. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And one thing I remember you talking about is how much like energy, because these foods are made so whole, they're grown in their gardens, they're made with love. You get so much energy and nutrition from these meals, which might seem like a smaller meal, but you're really getting a power punch of food, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are normally eating a lot of legumes, a lot of rice, pasta, eggs, and of course, tons of vegetables. And then if you want, you can also purchase some meat. Of course, meat is not available everywhere, same as fish. And fish, for example, would be something that I would just only recommend in places where you can get like fish directly from the rivers or lakes. But in this case, up in the mountains, it's a bit more difficult to get fish, of course. But then some people from the trip that were meat lovers, for example, on the same group that Alan came, they try the yak meat. That's
yak hamburgers.
Yak hamburgers, yeah. That's of course optional. What we always like to give you as a taste of a different meal or a different item that you can taste in Nepal is the yak cheese. That it's fantastic. I really love it, and we always like to even bring some cheese back to Iceland when we leave Nepal.
You know what was interesting for me regarding food? The most interesting thing, I expected vegetables, I expected cheese, everything, but I didn't expect pizza in every tea house. In every tea house, there is a pizza that you can order.
Yep. And it is not a common pizza. It is not like Domino's pizza at all. It's completely different. It's just homemade. Yeah. It's a base of bread with the toppings on top. But it's fantastic. I mean, it's completely of pizza, and it's just super tasty. I always like to say that one of the best pizzas I've ever eaten in my life was not in Annapurna Circuit, of course, but it was in Lomantang. That it's the kingdom of the Upper Mustang region, like one of the most isolated places you can get to in Nepal. And they had the most amazing pizza I've ever tasted. It was fantastic. It was just, of course, it was full of toppings like veggies and egg and everything on top. So it was, I don't know, like crust was maybe this, and then the toppings were something like this. So
It's almost a lasagna at that point.
Yeah, kind of.
That's so good. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the trip that you offer, because I know one thing that you do that's really special is I believe it's the first 2 days you spin in Kathmandu, and you get to kind of experience and dip your toes into the Nepali culture before you head out on the trek.
Yeah.
So Albert, confirmed you do spend those first 2 days in Kathmandu, right?
That's correct. So
And-
first day, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Now, I mean, I was going to say that first day is like arrival day. Of course, most of our travelers, they do not come from the same country. We have people coming from US, Canada, from Croatia, as Alan did. We had people last year also coming from Iceland, coming from Ireland, and we have people coming from Italy, many places at the end. The thing is that the first day, we never like to do it as a completely fixed day, as people, they arrive basically on completely different times with their flights to the international airport. So the regular routine on the first day is that we just pick you up on the airport whenever the time is that you arrive, and then we will just transfer you to the hotel that is in Tamil in Kathmandu, in the center of the city. And that day is a bit of like a resting day for those who are coming with jet lag, for those who are coming late. But of course, since it's the first day, we always like to go for dinner all together. And before dinner, we do a small briefing on our headquarters, we could call them. That is basically a pub in Kathmandu. That is where we normally go for dinner and for drinks. And it's also the offices of our partner in Nepal, that it's Supin. Yeah, we do that. And then the second day, we wake up early in the morning and we go for spending an entire day just walking and discovering Kathmandu, like different city places, temples, and we go to different stupas. Yeah, we visit completely different sites.
Yeah, I love the infusion of the cultural piece beforehand. So Kevin, hopefully that answers your question. He asked, how many days ahead of the trip should you plan to arrive? So if you arrive day one, you're going to be rock solid. Did you arrive day one, Alan, just that first day of the scheduled trip? And then just
I like the situation that it is not a strict schedule on the first day, because I wanted by myself to feel a little bit of the town. So I came around 2, maybe something like that, 2 p.m., 1 p.m. But later evening, I like the Czech pub. And our first briefing on the headquarters, I liked that briefings with the maps and cards and plans, and the beer afterwards. So yeah, I think it's important to have these 2 days to just feel the climate, feel the temperature, feel the culture, the people, the atmosphere there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Also, it's a very good thing to come to Nepal and have the first 2 days in Kathmandu, because you're gonna be around 1,000 meters high. So it's like around 800 meters high, if I'm not mistaken. And then for people who are living on the coast, like it happened last year, for people living in Canada, for people like us living in Iceland, being at that altitude, the first days might be a bit dizzying. You can feel that kind of strange feeling. So being for 2 days prior to the trip and prior to the hike, in the capital might be a very good idea. Then we had last November one girl that came, I think it was 1 or 2 days before. Of course, that's an option, but then I would just invest those days on resting rather than on just doing a lot of stuff, because you do not want to start the trip completely exhausted.
Perfect. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. It really does help to have those days at 8,000. What did you say? 8,000 feet, right? To get that elevation under your belt just a hair, because I know you're going up to what, 17,700 feet in the end.
17.
So Sue,
yep.
Yeah, Sue, we will talk. I will have Albert kind of go through some of the elevation and walk you through how he takes everyone bit by bit, slowly up the mountain, and all the passes, so it doesn't feel like too much at once. But before we jump into that, I want to kind of wrap up logistics a little bit. I want to think about visas, permits for hiking, any additional fees. Because sometimes it's like, oh, I'm signed up to go to Aconcagua, but I have to buy a $900 permit to go climb in the Vaca Valley, where Aconcagua is. That it's going to the Peruvian government. So just curious if there's any additional permits, fees, and then how to manage visas as well.
So when you're coming to Nepal, you have 3 visas that you can just choose in between. First one, it's 15 days, then 30 days, and then 90 days. The price of those visas, it's for 15 days is $30, then 30 days, it's $50, and 90 days, it's $125, if I'm not mistaken. You can do it either just on arrival or just contact the Nepalese embassy on your country. We have had people doing both, like people from US and from Canada, just getting their visas before traveling, and people, as we normally do, we purchase a visa on arrival, always. But then you need to make sure that you have the required papers, that basically you need to just fill everything up there. And sometimes you are also required to give the place where you're going to be staying the first nights, an emergency contact in Nepal. But that's some information that we always like to send before the trip. And then there are 2 permits for going on the Annapurna Circuit, the TIMS and the ACAP. So one is the Trekkers Information Management System permit, and the other one is the Annapurna Conservation Area permit. Both of those permits we take care of, just getting those while you are on the city, on Kathmandu. So we only require you to send us a copy of the passport before arriving, would be always nice, and then the pictures for the permits.
Perfect. That's super helpful. So the visas on the traveler to purchase for the amount of days that they need, but then any permits, you do need hiking permits, but that's included in the trip that you guide and you lead there. Oops, sorry, bumped my table. And so there's no additional permits that the guests need to purchase on their own independently.
No.
Perfect. So one more logistics questions, and there's some questions coming in about this in the chat box. I'm going to give Alan a chance to talk about the group. I know you said you were 51 years young, so I would love to hear, when you took the trip, 52 now, I would love to hear about what was kind of the age range that you saw in the group that you went with, and how did you kind of come together as a group? Did you come together as a group and kind of have that bonding and connection together? So I'd love for you to talk about, the ages that you had in your group and how you guys felt as a team.
Well, Albert, you remember we had a birthday celebration there.
Yep.
Yes. So one young lady, she was 28, and she celebrated 28th birthday on 4,800 meters elevation gain. So it's around 17,000 feet, something like that. So from 28 to my partner, we are sleeping 2 people in one room. And he was, I think, 64, something like that.
Something like
64. That. So the range is quite high. And we were, thinking, how this guy will walk, all this trip. And actually, at the end of the day, he was the best ones. Yeah. He was really absolutely amazing.
It was amazing. It was
absolutely amazing. And at the end of the day, you cannot avoid to becoming a group, because it is the energy from Albert and Monica and Nepal guys who is creating the atmosphere. This is the first thing. The second thing, there is some moments when you need to help to each other. Some moments where you celebrate. So, and you are together a long time. But at the same time, we were 9 people there. So you have a lot of time being together and to reflect. For example, for me, this was really important to have these reflective hours alone. So you can choose, basically, you have a freedom to be with or to put yourself a little bit out or isolate yourself.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Alan. That's one thing we always hear about Albert and Monica's trips is the cohesion that they bring to the group. And I'm really glad that you felt that too. And so anywhere from a 28-year-old celebrating her birthday there, all the way up to what you said, 64. And that 64 you said was the strongest person out there. So there was a question about an upper age restriction. It's getting the training, and we'll talk about training before Alan jumps off, because I want to hear his perspective. It's getting your body ready for this. And frankly, a 64-year-old is going to be just as great as a 28-year-old because they've had so many experiences and training and options to get out there and experience it. And I love the choice, the voice and choice you have. And I want solo time and I want group time. Alan, one last question about the dynamic of the group. Were you a solo traveler coming into this 9-person group?
Yes.
Perfect. So a lot of people solo travel and they're like, oh, will I make friends? This is going to be okay. You guys got this. You have a lot of solo travelers, right, Albert?
Yeah, normally is what we normally get. And of course, from time to time, we also get couples and groups of friends. But the most common thing to get is just solo travelers.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'm going to let Albert really quickly talk a little bit about the fitness level that's needed. And then Alan, I would love for you to talk, I know you have to get off soon, about how you trained for this trip, given the information that Albert shares. Yeah.
Okay. So basically it's a challenging trip. You're going to be hiking. There's no porter service offered during the trip. So that means that you are required to just carry your backpack by yourself, so no one else is going to carry your luggage. That also means that you need to know how to pack light. Your backpack should not weigh more than 8 to 12 kilos. That might be around 17, 20 something pounds, more or less. I got lost there.
I'll do it.
But yeah, you need to be active. You need to be able to hike on uneven terrain. But I would say that most of all, you need to be prepared mentally for this, because there are going to be a lot of moments where you're just going to crumble because it's cold, it's windy, we are going too fast, we are going too slow, even though we always try to go on the same rhythm, slowly pace. One of the keys for avoiding getting this altitude sickness, for example, is always going slow. We have had over the years a lot of people that they have come to the trip that they are either trail runners, that they love running, they are very fit. And at the end, I can tell you that fitness is not the biggest requirement for the trip. If you can do the hike slow, if you keep yourself hydrated, and I think, Alan, you might agree with me, like those who run on the mountain get the consequences of the altitude sickness faster than people that do everything slower.
Yeah, interesting. I love that. Alan, do you want to speak about your training and your thoughts on that before you sign off?
Yeah. So generally, I really love the strategy of having your own packs by your own, no porters, because after you finish in that way the Annapurna trek, it will be really feeling like a hero, because there are people there with porters. They are looking for us like a lousy tourists, to be honest, and we are like heroes there. And I like the feeling. Regarding my training, I mean, you cannot prepare for the altitude because the body will react as it reacted. But for me, the most important like advices were, okay, drink a lot of water, bike slowly, and don't drink alcohol, coffee, all this stuff in the mountain. Before that, I prepare myself mostly by walking, so be able to walk 20 kilometers, and that's the most important thing. Just walk. And regarding mentally, you will have a lot of help there from Albert and Monica. So I don't see a problem regarding mental part. There will be a struggle in some moments, but you have community there that will help you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And Alan, I believe you have to head off. Is that correct at this time? So I just really quickly, on behalf of 57 Hours, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us again in Iceland. Albert, if you want to say any thanks to Alan before he signs off, he is.
On behalf of me and Monica, thanks again for joining, and we'll see you soon. Really
see you soon.
Thank you again,
bye,
Alan.
people. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, Albert, it's just us now. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Hard-hitting questions are coming in. So I know you mentioned, and Alan was talking about the elevation. It's really hard to prepare for almost 18,000 feet anywhere in the United States, maybe unless you're lucky enough to live in Colorado, or maybe you live in Chamonix or something like that, but not everyone lives there. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your itinerary and how you work through elevation gain, and just kind of taking people through like the broad strokes of the trail and how you're going to get yourselves to 17,700 or 5,000 meters.
Yeah. So the thing is that during the first stages of the trail, even though we go slowly, we try to cover longer distances, ranging between 15, 16 to 20K. You're gonna need to help me with the conversion to miles. And then after 3,000 meters high, that would be 3,000 meters high to feet.
Oh, I'm in miles, kilometers. Sorry.
Sorry.
3,000, you said?
Meters, yeah.
That's almost 10,000 feet.
Yeah. So from 10,000 feet in advance, we normally tend to decrease the distances during the trail. So we go from 16 kilometers-ish down to 10 to 6 kilometers each day. So we just arrive way earlier to the accommodation. So we have plenty of time for resting and for drinking. As I mentioned before, one of the key points for avoiding or for preventing getting this altitude sickness is just drink a lot of water and a lot of black tea. As Alan said, if you can avoid drinking alcohol, if you can avoid drinking coffee, that's fantastic, because both of them, they help your body to dehydrate, while black tea helps your body to just expulse all the liquids that your body doesn't need. So you will go a lot of times to the toilet, but you will not get altitude sickness. Either me and Monica, we have never got altitude sickness on the last, well, since the first time that we went to Nepal. We were lucky to say that. We have got people that have got altitude sickness, and most of the time has been because they were just running, because they wanted to be the first one arriving to the villages, because they were too tired and they were just not thinking about going too fast or too slow. So they were just rushing together, the first ones. And because they were getting to a place and saying, I just want to get a strong coffee today, or I just want to get high calorie diet with fried stuff and stuff like that. So you need to eat light. You need to eat pasta, rice, legumes, vegetables. You need to keep yourself strong. Like a few years ago, we got a question from a person that wanted to come to Nepal while doing this fasting thing. That's something that you should definitely not do in Nepal. You need to keep yourself fed. You need to keep yourself with a lot of energy for the days that you have ahead. And yeah, I don't think I'm just missing anything about this. Of course, as we always like to say, getting altitude sickness is not a problem. The problem comes if you are not able to identify the symptoms, or if you keep pushing yourself. Getting altitude sickness, it's one of the most common things. It's like going sailing and you get seasickness. It's exactly the same. You can get it, you can avoid it or prevent it, of course. But if you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, then the problem comes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know a question that everyone likes to ask. No one has asked it yet, but it's been asked. What about altitude medicine? Is that something you recommend? Do you like that? The age-old question, do you bring the medicine or not?
I always like to bring by myself a couple of pills of Diamox. That is the medicine that is recommended for altitude sickness. What is both recommended here in Europe and in Nepal is not taking the medicine from the very first moment that you step in Nepal. So you only take the medicine when you need to, because you're getting altitude sickness. Because this medicine, Diamox, helps to your body to lose a lot of liquid. It helps your body to dehydrate. So, for example, we had a few years ago one person on the trip that she had to take one pill of Diamox because she couldn't sleep for an entire night, and the following day she had to spend the entire day drinking water because she couldn't literally continue. She was completely dehydrated because of taking one pill. So yeah, our recommendation always is bring the medicine and try not to use it.
I love that. You do that by hydrating, eating well, not drinking coffee, not smoking cigarettes, all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe you said before, you can buy Diamox in Kathmandu, correct?
Yeah.
If you have a prescription ahead of time. So that's something you can take care of there, which is really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. On the first day when you arrive, you normally have time. First or second day, we normally have plenty of time for purchasing both medicines and the gear that we were just missing for the trail.
Yeah. So Cam asked a great question, and this kind of has to do with managing the elevation and the mileage. Is there any sickness, ailment beyond like you have a broken ankle? You probably don't want to do this hike right now. Is there anything that you've noticed? Like, is it high blood pressure? Is it something like that people struggle with at elevation that they should take particular care with? As a bottom line, if you're doing any hike like this, talk to your doctor. But if you notice anything or anything that you would say like, oh no, you should reconsider.
Yeah, absolutely. For example, if you have breathing problems or anything like that, definitely that's something that you need to reconsider. Like, yeah, it's one of the first problems when you're in high altitude, getting some breathing problems. So if you already came to a trip with some very strong cough or a very strong cold from before, then maybe it might be a problem at the end.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So hopefully that answered that question. And Sue was just reconfirming, coffee is going to dehydrate you. She said, but it's black tea. Okay. You also said black tea, it has caffeine. It's going to be dehydrating as well. Less than coffee though, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So really being wise when you're there. If caffeine is something you absolutely need, black tea is better than coffee. If you can go without it, going green tea might be better, something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you, Sue, for asking that question again. And then Cam, there really is no I'm answering these questions as they're popping in because they're kind of about the group still. Is there an upper age limit? Albert said he's had up to 64. No, it's about he's shaking his head no. Yeah.
No, I would never say there's like an age limit on top. There is an age limit below. Like for example, we always recommend well, we always require at least 18 years old, or if they are like 17, they should come with a parent, of course. But for like, as Alan said, we had one person on 64. We had last year in Iceland one lady on 78. We recently take a course with a guy who was almost 80 years old for guiding in one of the most remote places in the world. So yeah, at the end, the age is here. So as long as you are able to hike, as long as you are able to take part on a hiking trip like this one, and to cover the distance and to get to the altitude signal to the no to the to those high altitude, and to have that mental
Like,
like being positive and just assuming that you're coming for a challenging trip and just bringing a big smile. I wouldn't say that there's any
yeah.
age or anything like that.
And Cam just revealed they are 71 years young.
Mm-hmm.
So sounds like you've had many participants in that 70-year-old range. Maybe not many, but quite a few very well qualified to be there people.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that and being vulnerable and open about those questions, Cam. We really appreciate it. All right, let's go back to the trail, Albert. You painted a beautiful picture about the food along the way, but I know that there are tea houses that folks are actually staying at. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about that experience, about living on the trail, and how it feels to go from tea house to tea house?
Yeah, absolutely. So first nights, the last nights we stay in Kathmandu on a hotel in the city center. That is kind of like a oasis because it has a big garden. It's just away from big sounds. Kathmandu might look kind of chaotic from time to time, so being there is actually super nice. And then when we set off to the trail and we start hiking, we normally spend the nights in local tea houses. These tea houses are basically the houses of the local people. So they have decided just to rebuild part of these houses to transform into different rooms, into toilets, showers, etc. We always like to use twin rooms, as Alan said before, for all our participants. So you will be sharing a room with another person, except when we are on high camp, that would be the last accommodation before reaching the mountain pass, Thorong La Pass. And that place, for example, last year we had to put 3 people together because, as Alan said, we were 9, meaning that there was going to be one person just sleeping by herself. And in this case, it was going to be really cold. It's the coldest place of the entire trip. So it's always good, because of the cold and because of safety, in case that person has some problems during the night, to spend the night with more people. So in that case, there were 3 people sleeping together on the same room in 3 different beds, of course. And then these tea houses, these local tea houses, they're very basic. So do not expect to get a lot of heating on the rooms or anything like that. We get electricity on most of the rooms during the first days of the trail. And then heating, we normally get one big stove on the place where we eat dinner. So it's at the end is all like a common room where we all gather and have dinner and spend the time while we are not hiking, because it's warm and it's cozy there. So because of that, because your room is cold, you need a proper sleeping bag. You cannot bring very like slim sleeping bag or anything like that. You need a proper down sleeping bag. You can purchase it in Kathmandu. We know a place where you can get a very nice high quality sleeping bag. We have been using the same sleeping bags from the same store for the last years, and we have never had any problem, even though last 2022, both in April and November, we were there doing the Annapurna Circuit with 2 groups, and we spent both nights up in the Thorong La Pass, at the Thorong High Camp, and it was minus, I don't know, minus 12, minus 15 Celsius. So that's really, really cold. So lower than 11 Fahrenheit. And I slept like a baby. It was just warm and cozy on my sleeping bag, and I had no problems at all. So you can either do that or do as Alan did last year. He purchased, for example, his sleeping bag before coming to the trip. That's also an option. And then, as we were talking about tea houses, this common room where we have the stove is the place where we normally handle dinners and breakfast, and then sometimes also lunch, when we arrive very early on the last days of the trip to the tea houses, to the accommodation. And of course, you have toilets and showers. Toilets and showers are shared, meaning that there's going to be one toilet, so you go inside, you do your needs, and then a second person comes. So because of that, it's responsibility for every single person to keep the toilet completely clean. Of course, there's no cleaning service during the whole day running on these tea houses. So just imagine these places as a very basic accommodations with limited services. And then showers, you can get a shower in most of the places, but we do not recommend taking a shower over 3,000 meters high, because you might get a cold, and that's something that you definitely do not want to get in the while on the hike, while on the trip. Absolutely not. And what else? We from time to time get some Wi-Fi that it was not possible until a few years ago. And it is amazing seeing how this has developed on the last years. Like, people were able to connect with their kids. We had two couples last November, and they were able to connect every single day with their kids for FaceTime.
Cute.
So it was, it was not the best connection, but it was enough. Of course, from Manang, that would be over 3,000 meters already. The internet connection, or Wi-Fi in this case, and electricity might be super limited, or even it might be impossible to get any. So because of that, it's good to bring along with you a power bank for the last days.
Perfect. So yeah, and Sue just reiterated that question. You will have some electricity down low, but less as you go up. Bringing that power bank is the best bet. Sue, we'll talk about sleeping bag just a little bit more, but I wanted to answer that really quickly. Albert, one question I have, I know the tea houses obviously have your meals. They're fairly cozy, as in warm. They're going to have showers and water, toilets. When you're hiking along the trail, because you're hiking somewhere between 7 to 9 to 10 miles, that's those you're on the trail for quite a while. What do you do if you have to go to the bathroom on the trail? You need to refill your water on the trail. You mentioned lunch. How does lunch work? So thinking on trail access to those basic needs.
All right. So if you need to go to the toilet, you have different options. Like, let's say if it's number 1, you can go whatever you want, basically. If it's number 2, normally we require you to wait a bit longer, because we are just passing through small tea houses almost every, 300 meters, 400 meters. So every 15 minutes, there's a small tea house at least. Regarding water, you can refill water almost in every single village along the way. But it's important to bring this kind of pills for making the water drinkable for you guys. Probably you're going to see Nepalese people drinking that water. There's going to be no problem for sure. It would be a problem for those who are just used to drink a completely different kind of water. So it's always good to avoid any incident to bring all these pills. Or you can also bring these filters, or the filters, or the UV filters that work perfectly good, but they are a bit more heavy than the pills. So at the end, depends on you. And it was water, it was toilets, and the other one was lunches, wasn't it?
Lunches on the trail, yeah.
So we always like to stop for having proper lunch on the trail. It is true that at the end we tend to be between 7 to 12 people plus the guides, meaning that that's a lot of people for just arriving to one tea house and say, hey, each of us wants a completely different course. So what we normally do is the guides, we go ahead of the group a few minutes and we stop at the tea house and we just choose 3 different items or 3 different courses that we are going to be able to choose in between for that lunch that day. So when people arrive and they sit on the table, we just offer 3 different options. People choose. Those options tend to be different from one day to another. So you are not repeating every single day. And of course, like if there's someone that wants, instead of rice or noodles or vegetables or whatever, they want just a soup, that's also a possibility. Like, for example, Monica and I, we are completely different. While hiking, I don't like to eat too much, while she needs way more energy. So I like normally to eat just like a soup and some boiled eggs, and she needs to eat a bit more. But at the end, it depends on each person. So yeah.
That's awesome. Super helpful stuff there. So, you're in the wilderness, you're really out there, but you are experiencing town to town, tea house to tea house, or village to village, excuse me.
Yeah.
So you have that. Yeah. Mark asked a great question. It might be a personal preference question. Do you prefer bringing a reusable water bottle or an actual water bladder? Is that too much weight on your back since you have access to water all the time? What do you recommend there?
That's a very good question. I think the bladder is a very, very, very good item to bring along with you, because you are going to have access to the water the entire day instead of just stopping and taking the bottle out. But at the same time, you need to make sure that the bladder is very well closed, and because we know a lot of people, and we have had a lot of clients that they just put the water in, close the bladder, and they start hiking, and at some point they start feeling completely wet on the backpack. So then it's not just you, but your sleeping bag and your luggage. So as long as the bladder is completely closed and has no problems, then you're good to go. Yeah. In my case, I always like to use my bottle, because it doesn't, I had that weird experiences with bladders in the past, just leaving some extra taste on the water. So I like to use my bottle.
Yeah, it sounds like whatever is tried and true for you, whatever already works for you. I always do a bladder because I backpack in the desert all the time, so my bladder is like rock solid. So Mark, great question there. One more question from Cam about water. I suspect bottled water is well available in Kathmandu, but I'm not hearing that that's an option once you're actually on the trek. Is that correct?
It is available in most of the places, but then you need to think about a different stuff. That is the amount of plastic that you're just leaving behind. Of course, we always prefer just to put a small pill that will help you to drink that water, and nowadays those pills, if you know which ones to purchase, they do not leave any extra taste at all.
Yep. I like the Katydin ones. I know I've gotten those at REI, and I oftentimes, when I'm in the backcountry, I'll do the mechanical UV or squeeze filter, but then I also will hit it with the pill, because I really don't like backcountry things. So learning a filtration system that works for you. And there are ones there that do not taste bad. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all that, Albert. So what we want to talk about next, folks, we have about 5 more minutes left, just as a check-in on time. We've done a lot on logistics getting to Kathmandu. We've talked about the trail, the tea houses, water, toilets, training. Alan gave some great tips on that. We want to wrap up with gear and packing. Those are kind of our last questions that are coming in. And we'll take the last 5 minutes to do that. Does that sound good, Albert?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. So first of all, Sue was intrigued by buying a sleeping bag in Kathmandu. I know you said that that's a possibility. So 2 questions from Sue. What temperature rating do you recommend? And are they very expensive in Kathmandu, or is it actually a very affordable thing to do in that city?
So the sleeping bags that we normally recommend for coming to the trip are, you're gonna need to help me with the Fahrenheit conversion, but would be between -10 and -20 Celsius comfort temperature, or -15 you can also do. That's also good. -10, -15.
So a 15-degree bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can purchase those. Yeah.
Yeah, 15.
Yeah, sorry. And you can purchase those either on your home country or in Kathmandu. Just to give you an idea, the ones that we purchase in Kathmandu might cost something around, what, 200 US ish each one, something like that. And they have been working very good. Of course, they are not this kind of like fake sleeping bags from North Face or all of these famous brands. They are from a Nepalese brand that they supply the gear for expeditions. So at the end, they are super good. I mean, I have had no problems, no regrets. I've been using them in the Icelandic winter, and I have had no problems at all. So definitely 100% recommended. People also really want to bring along to have a bit more space when coming to Kathmandu, so they prefer to purchase the sleeping bag directly there. What I can definitely recommend if you're thinking about purchasing a sleeping bag in Kathmandu is bring your own compression bag for the sleeping bag, because the ones that you can find in Kathmandu are low quality compression bags.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then do you have a preference on down or synthetic? Or is there one that's better than the other on the trail on Annapurna?
I will always be a fan of down sleeping bags. Yeah, absolutely.
It literally keeps me warmer. Even if the rating of the synthetic is better, I will stay warmer in down.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. That's, again, a personal preference there. Okay, a couple more questions coming in. Mark said he's seen the list of gear to bring, which is really helpful. Any brands or anything, like thinking about shoes, especially anything, you don't have to jump into brands. He asked about specific brands or models, but I would love for you to also talk about shoes, running shoes, sneakers versus actual boots. Or is there anything or any gear that you're like, you must have this?
No, I don't think. Like, for example, a lot of people inquire us about bringing gaiters to the trip. Nothing like that. It's really necessary. Like, if there's gonna be ice or snow, we will provide micro spikes. But in any case, you need to have a good pair of hiking shoes for coming to the trip. Most people like to bring boots. We have had people bringing running shoes, like trail running shoes. That could also work, but then if you are gonna cross the pass, the mountain pass, you might find some snow, and then you can get some snow inside your running shoes. So definitely, I would not recommend those. We have had people bringing both trail running shoes for the entire trip, but changing to boots the last day, I don't think it's really worth it. Bringing two different pairs of shoes, just one is definitely enough. I do not like to talk about brands because there are a lot of good brands, and actually we are currently moving from mountain boots, like the classic mountain leather boots that are the ones that we are still using, towards barefoot boots. We're slowly making the transition, and you can really feel. It's actually a pity that Alan is not here, because he was also a big fan of these barefoot shoes, as well as we are. But yeah, at the end, I always recommend, like, if you like hiking, if you are really interested in doing this trip or doing any other kind of trip in Nepal, bring a good pair of boots, mountain boots, not too high, not too low, at least that they cover your ankle, so it will be protected, and that they are waterproof.
Yeah,
and
perfect.
for some kind of sandals or Crocs for having your feet completely rested when you get to the tea houses.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So hopefully that answers a little bit of questions that we were asking about brands. It's less about the brand name, more about the functionality. So getting a high top boot, getting a down sleeping bag that's rated to the right degree, bringing the bottle or the bladder that works for you and is tried and true.
Yeah.
And then Sue just asked specifically about a brand, Ultra. I am a huge Ultra fan. I would bring something tougher to Annapurna, 100%. That's what I hike in, Sue, here in the desert. But if I was doing Annapurna, I would ramp it up because I just think they are, like you said, pretty thin. They're wonderful. I don't know if you're familiar with them. So
yeah, I was going to mention that you actually don't need like really warm boots. Just keep in mind that the first days of the trail, you're going to be around 20 Celsius. Then you're going down to 10, 15 Celsius. And when you're up in the mountains in the cold, it will be way cooler. So it's better to just bring along with you a good pair of socks.
Yeah. Ooh, socks. Always. Love it.
Always.
I get cold feet. So that's one of my downfalls. Well, folks, I think that wraps up all the questions. We had 25 questions or so come in. Albert, that huge Q&A list you saw of mine, we actually answered so many of them. Folks, I do want to tell you one thing though. If you're thinking about booking Annapurna, you're going to see an email from myself and Maya in the follow-up. We are offering a gear package since we're talking about gear, actually a gear giveaway. It's like a $350 bundle. It's going to have a sleeping bag, a vest, an actual pack, things like that in it. And so if you register for the Annapurna Trek with Albert and Amarok, the first 3 people are going to actually get that for free, which is super cool. We're really excited. The sleeping bag is a great one. It's going to keep you warm. So keep your eye out for that email also with that giveaway. If you book, like I said, 3 people, which is amazing. And Maya has shared the link to Albert's trip in the chat box. If you're like, hey, Annapurna is great, but my interest was caught about Faroe Islands or about Iceland with Albert or even a day trip, just reply to that email. We'll make sure that you get connected with Amarok and Albert and Monica and all their amazing adventures. If you have more questions about Annapurna, reply to us also, and we'll make sure to answer them as well. I am going to leave the last thoughts and final moments to Albert, but on behalf of 57 Hours, thank you so much, Albert, for being awesome. Thank you to Monica. Thank you to everyone at Amarok that's there. But I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I just wanted to mention that the trip in November, it's confirmed. So we are going. If you want to come, we're just missing you, and it would be a great adventure as it has been the last years. So if you guys want to come, we are ready for having you.
I love it. So good. And Sue said she's looking for somebody to fly out of the US if possible. So I'm going to leave the chat open for a little bit as we sign off. If anyone wants to message Sue and say, I'm that person, then that would be lovely for Sue. But again, thank you all for coming today. The recording is going to be sent to you in a couple of days, about 5 days. So keep an eye out for that if you missed anything. Hopefully you're seeing the chat box right now, Albert, and lots of thank yous in there. Cool. Folks, that wraps it up. Have a good rest of your day, a morning and evening, wherever you are. Thank you for coming today. And as always, reach out with questions.